Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solipsist Rambles, where this week I had something in mind that came up in a conversation I was having with a friend of mine, and it gets around to a couple of other topics that we've talked about before. So, I was talking with this friend who, I'll just be frank, should quit their job. Like, that's the long and short of it. And I'm sure that many of you before have had the situation where, looking from the outside in, you can talk to one of your friends and be like, that job is making you miserable, and I get that you need money, but it's gonna break you. And it got me to thinking about something that I think about, honestly, fairly frequently, but in a very specific way, which is just about how not understanding your own weaknesses and your own vulnerabilities and the things that make you manipulatable are the kinds of things that will make you easy to exploit. Now, this comes in a whole bunch of different forms. In this particular case, this friend I'm talking to is like, it's their job. It's a job that they think they need to keep, even though that they are financially fine, that they are very good in their career and could probably very easily find a job, or well, if not easily, at least start working on finding a new job in their same field. And I understand, because I've definitely had those situations where I'm in a bad job and I don't even necessarily recognize just how bad it is. And it's scary for anything that's like important to your, like really critical to your life and where you are as a person. Losing your source of income, losing your source of housing, losing your source of like familial or romantic or friendly comfort. All those things, if you have to be confrontational about those things, those are really easy things that are very common for people to not realize just how unresilient they are. Those things are in their life. And so it brings me to thinking about, how do you address that? Especially because it's easy to not realize what your own weaknesses are. I've lived long enough now that I've had many periods in my life that I can look back on now and say, holy cow, in retrospect, it is glaringly obvious that I was in terrible suffering and or danger, and I should have gotten out way earlier than I did. And that has given me historically an opportunity to reflect on the things that I have struggled with, the things that I am weak to, the ways that I can be manipulated and have been manipulated historically. And I think a big part of that is recognizing not that you have to be strong against everything, but that you need to find ways around your weaknesses. It seems to be a fairly common thing these days in general in our culture, but especially in the realms of people who are find themselves associated with masculinity, that there's a resurgence in this sort of I need to be strong against all things kind of attitude, which has waxed and waned with time and has been on an upturn, unfortunately, it seems. This doesn't purely apply to people in that situation, but it's where I see it most often, where being strong, being capable, being independent, those are all things that are generally looked on as very strong, important features, things to be celebrated and elevated and strived for. And to be totally honest, over the course of my life, I have realized that it is very infrequent that any of those skills have come in particularly useful. Now, yes, there's areas here. I'm a very independent person. I'm very capable of handling a lot of things for myself, but that doesn't mean I want to go things alone a lot of the time. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at recognizing when I can reach out and ask for help. But that's a hard thing to do, especially in our culture and in our society and kind of people that we grow up with and around, who often tell us that you need to do that for yourself, or I'll be proud of you if you do that for yourself, or nobody will do that for you, you're on your own, those sorts of things. And it's very, if you're especially in the US, it's very baked into sort of this cultural myth about independence and freedom, and how the only way to get those things is through individuality and individual pain and suffering and growth as a result. And so that's really been seeping back into our culture, especially in the last 5-10 years in particular, I would say. But in a more specific sense, this is a reminder to recognize your own weaknesses. Because more often than not, people in that camp really they just ignore their weaknesses, or they stamp them down, they don't address them, whatever. Anything to not admit that they have weaknesses. But everybody has weaknesses. That is the nature of being a human being. You cannot be good at everything. You cannot be strong against everything. There are pain points in every person's life where, if they are brought up again, or if they are left unaddressed and then brought up at a painful moment, can be really easily twisted to manipulate somebody. And sometimes this is very direct. There are people who will simply look for people's weaknesses and then use them directly to manipulate them. And then there's much more subtle, but honestly sometimes more sinister cases, like employment, where if it's a question of your income, your healthcare, all these other things that are often very dependent on your employment. The fear that you may suffer retribution at work if you speak out, or request a raise, or request representation in some form, any of those things. Those are all really scary things when they are about something that directly impacts your ability to continue living a comfortable or even uncomfortable life. Losing your job is a very scary thing. And so that brings me around to recognizing how you can adapt, because often some of these things are just purely cultural, and then some of them are going to be personal. And in both cases, the biggest learning that I've done has been how to find ways around your weak points. Now, if that comes in a lot of different forms. So in the case of something like your work, that often means, hey, if you start to feel that your work experience is degrading, start looking for new opportunities. You never want to be looking for a job when you don't have one, because that's when you're the most stressed out, the least mentally capable of looking. You're the most likely to make mistakes. You're the most likely to give a bad interview, all these other things. Same with if you are in a bad relationship, or in a bad housing situation, or some combination of both. Trying to get out of one of those situations where you have nothing lined up in the future, that is a really fast way to stall any growth, any forward movement, and drive you back into a bad situation. And so looking for opportunities to go around those things is kind of what, to my mind, resiliency is all about. Resiliency is not a matter of strengthening yourself so you can take the hits. It's not necessarily, making sure, starving yourself and denying yourself all the resources in the world so that you can have a meager savings so that you can lose your job and then go a couple of months. It's about building those resiliencies around that. It's, finding the resources. It's talking to the right people. It's looking when you have those opportunities and not when your back is up against a wall. It's recognizing when you have bad reactions when you've had bad reactions to a certain topic of discussion in the past, and figuring out how to, rather than, if somebody addresses them to you, pivot away from them, rather than taking them head on and just trying to take the brunt, the brunt of that impact if you feel like you're processing it poorly, and like deflect around it, or be able to like find the resiliency to say, hey, I'm not comfortable talking about that. And rather than having a confrontation, have a moment of, here, I'm being like brutally honest with you that I don't want to talk about that subject. Let's move on to something else. And if somebody wants to actually have a conversation, they'll respect that. But a lot of that comes down to both self-recognition, the recognition of your own weaknesses, your own strengths, your own ability to tolerate certain situations, and how you interact with other people, and the way you value your interactions with other people. In this particular case, my friend is in a situation where their work is like severely underpaying them, working them way too hard, forcing them to come into the office when they don't need to. And like generally this has been going on for literally years now. And they are having a terrible time of it, and they talk about it frequently. And it's very easy to commiserate. I have certainly been in situations very much like that before. But at the same time, there's like opportunities to reflect back, and it's hard to tell. It's easy to look from the outside, right? It's hard to look from the inside, especially when you're stressed out about a situation. So it's easy for me to look at my friend's situation and say, listen, you either need to quit the job now because it's clearly making you miserable, or you need to start looking. Like those are basically your two options, right? Because the third option is you stay there and it breaks you, because I can see you're getting worse. Like I can see your sleep is getting worse, your like interactions with other people are getting worse, your interactions with me are getting worse. Like it's draining you, and you keep saying that like you'll be able to make it through this period or whatnot. But you were also saying that a year ago. The way I'm targeting this, the person who I was talking to about this will never see this. This is not a call out or anything. This is just, I'm using it as an example, and I'm not even using a totally accurate example of what I was talking to them about. But this is the point: is when you can't see a way out. Or when you think that you just have to stand still and take it, and that by sheer force of will you'll make it through. Those are the times that will break you, to be perfectly honest. Those are the times that will, even if they don't break you, will grind you down lower and lower until your breaking point gets lower, and until you have that day of reckoning, and then you're like way deeper in it, more likely. So recognizing a greater situation around you, that hey, this isn't about your job, this is about your entire like economic situation and all these other things, right? Let's look at your economics. Can you afford to just leave the job, or can you afford to take a day off to go do some interviews, or can you afford to like what's your economic situation? What's your like mental capacity for this? What are the things you can do to improve your mental capacity to like cut things off, to cut off the little things within the job, or stand up in the little ways for yourself that will make you more capable of doing the bigger things. You can't go leaping into big projects either. That's a good way to hurt yourself. Like if you want to take the metaphor literally here, if you go straight from I'm miserable in my job, but I'm going to force myself to keep doing it, and it's literally taking 12 hours a day for an 8-hour shift because of a whole bunch of other shenanigans, that's a good way to like do bad interviews and look for bad jobs and take anything else. And the same thing goes for like relationships and things like that as well. When you're in a situation, a relationship that's really bad, it's really easy to only see the things that are going well to your mind, because that's all you want to see. Same as like a job, you only look at the job for a bad job because it keeps paying you, and you're like, I keep getting this paycheck, that's good enough. And then as everything else crumbles around you, it gets worse. Same goes in relationships, whether romantic or just personal. If you are in a situation regularly and where you're only identifying the good things because that's all you want to look for, it's hard to notice the few good things crumble away into the already overwhelming pile of terribleness that's around you. And I'm saying this very much from experience on multiple occasions of being like, oh, it's real easy in retrospect to say this was the moment ages before this whole situation ended that I needed to be away from this situation. But especially if you're like me and you tend towards hopefulness and optimism, which some people may laugh at that. And I've been called pessimistic by a lot of people before. But I have a tendency to think I'm a very optimistic person, that realism and being critical does not prevent optimism. So being optimistic about a situation, though, can also drive you into some of those troubles. Being optimistic that the job will get better, the relationship will get better, like whatever the thing is, rather than ever taking the moment to back up, rather than ever talking to a friend and saying, hey, is my situation insane? And then taking their advice, or at least listening to it, having a different perspective. That's when you get into really big trouble. And whether it's a relationship or a job, or something else entirely, that's how other people get power over you. And that's how your life can go really sour without you even really noticing. There's a lot of people on some bad paths in life. And I don't even mean like in the metaphorical, the literary, he was on a terrible path kind of way. It's easy to fall into bad situations that don't even seem that bad to the passive onlooker maybe. But when you're deep in it and you're miserable and your job is making you suffer and your relationship is making you suffer and whatever else, and you have very little good going for you, that's a scary situation, and people they go their whole lives sometimes in bad situations. The number of marriages that I have seen, both people much older than me and people of my own generation, that I just look at from an outside perspective and go, I don't know that you guys like each other, or that you ever really liked each other. It's easy to get in bad situations and not take the perspective, not check, not look for ways around, not look for the little things to do, to never say to your partner, hey, I'm struggling with this, or hey, I don't like when you do this, or say to your boss, hey, I can't handle this thing that you've given me, or I know I need to draw a line on this day that I need off. It's not an option for me. Or I need this raise, and if you can't give it to me or compensate me in some other way, we can't come to an agreement, then I'm going to quit my job, or whatever. These are the things that make life resilient. These are the things that give you options. These are the things that prevent you from being in really bad situations for really long times. And bad situations, in my experience, don't tend to get slightly better over time. You can't wait it out. You can't wait out a job that's been underpaying you for 5 years. They're going to keep underpaying you. They have no motivation not to. You can't get out of a relationship that's slowly been crumbling or that you've been ignoring some of the problems of. That requires you and your partner to address each other and address your issues, and address your own issues and your issues with each other. These are the things that make you the things that make life better and make you able to make your own life better are those little resiliencies, those little abilities to say, nope, here's my line. And that's kind of my final point. Is it's funny because I think about this both from a personal perspective and from a work perspective. If you can't define, and I don't mean to like make this in too much of a businessy kind of thing, but I think this is the best way to explain it. If you can't define like the scope of what you want to accomplish and the limits of what you need to do and what defines success and failure, if you just sort of go through life just sort of accepting what comes and either fighting against it or letting it, hit you like a wave, that's how you end up in those bad situations. And so being able to say, here's the thing that must be, here's the thing that if I'm going to stay in this job, this needs to happen by this date, or whatever that definition is. I need my this relationship with this friend to not have this thing occur anymore. Otherwise, I need to adjust my expectations with this person. I need to, be able to have an open conversation with my partner about this topic. And if they can't address me with respect, then I need to adjust my relationship with that person. Those are the things that make you resilient. Not addressing every problem that you have, whether it's societally or in your head. Not trying to be strong at all moments. Not letting yourself not burying the parts of you that are weak or in pain or that you're embarrassed of. Those are the things you have to look at. You don't have to face them head on. You can take a side glance at them. You can be embarrassed. You can have those feelings that are bad, the feelings of I should be better than this or whatever. You can think those thoughts, but the process is still must go forward. You can't take your weakness and say, I'm unable to address my qualms with my boss and set a line. If you can't do it, if you're like, I have no possible way to address this issue, it's literally impossible, I promise you that it is. You just can't see it. It's it is possible in some way, and maybe it's because you haven't looked small enough, and maybe because you haven't looked big enough. Maybe you need to have that moment of reckoning of, I need to cut this out of my life entirely. Or maybe it's, I need to just say no once. Because no is really powerful. It's a really powerful word, and people don't say it very much. Being able to say no lets you keep your sanity, keep your autonomy, keep your power, and keep people from manipulating you and exploiting you for sometimes long periods of time, sometimes your whole life. So yeah, this is a really rambly one about very philosophical, and I don't know, maybe I'm saying nothing novel to you, but these are the things that this show was supposed to be about anyway, so I'm just rolling with it. I hope you got something out of this. And whether you did or didn't, or you have a personal anecdote to support or even negate what I've said here, then by all means, leave a comment and let me know. I hope you're having a good day. This has been the Social Solipsist, and I'll see you guys next time.